Welcome to Steve on Your Side on 9 News Plus. I'm 9 News consumer investigator Steve Stager. We hear from consumers all the time who struggle after money's been taken from their bank account and then they try to dispute those transactions with their bank. So this week, we're talking about some of the scams that we're hearing about, how we've managed to help consumers get their money back, and how you can advocate for yourself if money goes missing from your bank account. Scammers are only getting smarter and finding vulnerabilities in people who think that they have their guard up. Melanie from Longmont reached out after she realized that she'd not only been tricked, but couldn't get the money back from her bank. Jennifer Meckles joined the Steve on Your Side team with Melanie's story.
Early in the morning, I got a text around like 8 a.m., which I've received from Wells Fargo before. I've gotten these before.
Melanie Sponsily says it wasn't all that weird to get a message from her bank.
But this time it was like, there was a transfer initiated for $750. Did you initiate that?
And at first, this text from who she thought was Wells Fargo didn't seem weird either.
Can you verify your account, or can you verify your information? Ask me some information. I said yes, and then they were like, okay, so your accounts have been accessed. I'm gonna help you close your accounts and open you up new ones. They sounded just like Wells Fargo people. They transferred me from one division to another. They had the same hold music. They just had it nailed.
It all seemed legit. Until it did not.
The call got disconnected. That's the thing that got me. And I was like, this isn't right.
By the time she figured it out, the money was already gone.
It's almost $19,000.
The scammers tricked her into 3 different wire transfers from both her personal and her business accounts.
This is all the money I had. It's everything I had.
The scammers are trying to instill fear and get you to act quickly.
The FBI calls these scams phantom hackers, posing as your bank, trying to help you.
If we get it within 72 hours, there is a high chance that we can affect the potential freezing of those funds or the bank freezing of the funds.
Melanie moved fast, hoping she could stop them too.
Immediately got in my car. 5 minutes later, after I hung up the phone, I was at the branch. I think I've just been frauded. Like, I need help immediately. You guys need to help me cancel these transfers. Like, somebody please help me. And they were like, oh, I'm sorry, we don't have an appointment till 1 p.m.
The FBI says if it happens to you, move as fast as possible. Find a phone number from the back of your card or a bank statement and call your bank's fraud department. Tell them to initiate a wire recall. And then flag the FBI through the Internet Crime Complaint Center. That's at ic3.gov.
That will generate stuff in the background that will take place in an effort for us to try to freeze those funds or advise a bank that a fraudulent wire has taken place.
Despite Melanie's hustle to Wells Fargo,
my expectation would have been, first of all, when I asked for help, to immediately help me, like take it seriously, and also that they would protect me. They would back me up. They would fix it.
Instead of fixing it, Wells Fargo told Melanie in a follow-up letter to a complaint she was, quote, responsible for online wires that originate using your name and password, despite having, quote, completed the transactions at the direction of the scammer. And, quote, there is no time frame window for these types of transactions in which they could be canceled or stopped. The bank told her they tried to recall that money, but could only get back about $3,300, a fraction of what she'd lost.
I'm just out 16 grand.
She just hopes her story serves as a warning.
Frauds are getting deeper and deeper and more complex. Consumers are going to continue to lose confidence in being protected from this stuff.
Melanie filed several complaints with Wells Fargo after her experience. In a letter, the bank said that they followed their policies and procedures correctly. Our next story of missing money takes us to Adams County, where Bev Thompson noticed some suspicious transactions on her bank statement. She did everything you're supposed to do. She reported it to the bank immediately. The bank launched an investigation, but nearly a year later, she was getting nowhere. So she called Steve on Your Side. We found a legitimate fraud claim and an investigation full of holes. And Bev got her money back.
The device itself?
This is the story of a half-hearted investigation.
Go right ahead.
Thank you. It wasn't half-hearted by the officers in this video. They were very thorough. But another investigator wasn't even curious enough to look for this video.
That's the device itself? Yeah. Okay.
I want my money back.
Which left Bev Thompson stuck. Makes you want to bang your head against the wall.
Yeah, as you can tell, I'm anxious just talking about it.
Bev says she only uses her ATM card a few times a month at an ATM inside a Walgreens up the road in Thornton. Around New Year's this year, Bev noticed something strange on her bank statement.
Noticed that there was 4 $100 taken out.
There were 4 ATM withdrawals Bev never made the week of Christmas last year, totaling $420, all at ATMs inside other Walgreens locations.
I noticed it, and it was like, I got on the phone immediately. What can I do?
Go2 Bank immediately launched an investigation, but a month later,
They said that it wasn't fraudulent.
the bank sent back a long report detailing their decision. A report Steve on Your Side found has a few holes in it.
They started the thing about the chip thing. I don't understand all that stuff. And somebody had your card. I said, nobody had my card. No, nobody else could have done this.
The bank told Bev since her ATM card has a chip, it can't be duplicated. A quick Google search tells you a chip card can indeed be duplicated through a process called shimming, a new device installed on card readers that can duplicate a chip. Then there was the map. Oh, the map.
They've got these places. Well, they're within 10 minutes of your house. No, they're not.
Go2 Bank told Bev the transactions weren't fraudulent because they happened within the geolocation of the cardholder with a travel time of 13 minutes from her address and included a screenshot of a Google map with driving directions plugged in. Problem is that map is not Bev's address.
No, and I don't live in Denver.
Bev lives near 84th and I-25. Go2 Bank appears just typed in Denver, Colorado as the starting point and Lakewood, Colorado as the end. Does it feel like they did a complete investigation into
No,
this?
absolutely not.
Banks are trying to protect your money. You're trying to protect your money in many different ways. At the same time, I think there's been an increased amount of fraud that banks are dealing with.
Mark Fetterhoff works in fraud prevention with the AARP. He says Bev did exactly what any consumer should do. She contacted her bank right away, filed a police report, she documented conversations she had, and most importantly, she kept fighting when the bank said no.
I think it's really important to stay adamant about the situation. If you know you're not at fault, especially, continue to file disputes with the bank.
Bev kept reopening that fraud claim with new evidence.
Walgreens said, yeah, we had a problem. Somebody put a skimmer in there.
Even after she provided contact information for the manager at that store, the bank ignored it. Does it feel like they're listening to any of this?
No.
At her wit's end, nearly a year later, she called Steve on Your Side, which brings us back to that video.
I saw them, they seemed suspicious.
See, Steve on Your Side called Thornton Police to ask about Bev's police report. We also asked about any calls for service involving that lone Walgreens ATM Bev uses. And voila, another police report from the week of those fraudulent transactions when a clerk called the cops after she saw 2 guys taking something off the ATM.
Looks like they took one off and put a new one on.
A records request and $15 later, we had video that shows something up with that ATM where Bev swiped her card.
I did get a call on Friday from a customer saying his card was used at the ATM, but he was at home sleeping.
When we sent that information to Go2 Bank, they told us they'd look into it. 2 days later, nearly a year since this all started, Bev got a call that all the money was getting refunded.
To other people, $400 may not be much, but to me, that's a lot of money. It's a lot of money.
If you think you've been victim of a fraud like this, you've got to act quickly. You have 60 days to notify your bank when you find that fraudulent transaction. And the bank has to provide you with the documentation they use to make a decision in your case. So be sure you ask for that. Much like Bev, Megan Holt has no idea how someone got access to her online savings account, but someone got in and withdrew about $7,000. She filed a dispute with her bank, and much like Bev, she was getting nowhere.
So I'm trying to think about my future and start to make responsible decisions.
Megan Holt was starting something I wish I did when I was 29. She started saving.
I decided to open up a high yield savings account through SoFi. I'm just putting money in. I'm not using the card to go and purchase anything else. So it's strictly just for savings.
It was all going great until it wasn't.
One day I get a call from the bank and they share with me, hey, there are some odd transactions happening on your account.
Megan logged in and found a lot of odd transactions.
They had done 19 transactions between $100 to $900. They did it almost like every day.
The total made her jaw drop.
$7,363.
You have that memorized.
Yep, I have it engraved in my head for sure.
More than $7,000 transferred to the same person.
It just said friend to friend transfer to this person. that I have never heard of before, for sure.
Not a friend.
No, definitely not a friend. Not a friend of mine.
Megan disputed the suspicious transactions with SoFi, which immediately shut the account down and started an investigation. Do you have any idea how these people accessed your account?
I have no idea. All I know is that on the same exact day, someone tried to hack into one of my other bank accounts, my credit union.
SoFi's investigation didn't really discover what happened either.
They come back to me and say, hey, this looks legitimate, so you're not getting your money back.
But it's not legitimate.
No, it's not. They said that it doesn't look like there was a struggle to get into the account, to get the password and get in.
Well, the law says that the consumer is not liable for unauthorized electronic funds transfers. The financial institution is liable for an unauthorized electronic funds transfer.
Dan Vedra is a consumer protection attorney in Denver who works on these bank fraud cases regularly. He says the Federal Electronic Funds Transfer Act protects consumers like Megan when things like this happen. The problem is schemes like this are increasing and banks are getting a bit overwhelmed.
There are so many electronic funds transfers and there's so many of these unauthorized transactions going on each and every day that they don't have the manpower to reasonably investigate every single dispute that comes through.
Steve on your side reached out to SoFi to see why Megan wasn't protected by the EFTA in this case. And wouldn't you know it, the bank told us they reinvestigated her case, found new information, and reverse their decision.
They have an obligation to investigate the dispute, to conduct a reasonable investigation to determine whether the funds transfer was authorized or unauthorized, and they have an obligation to credit your account back if it was unauthorized.
After that story aired, Megan told us that SoFi called her, let her know that a paper check for $7,800 was on the way. She's going to actually get the interest that she lost out on throughout the course of that entire fight with the bank. SoFi says keeping its members' money safe is a top priority, and they encourage people to report suspicious transactions right away. Again, under the law, you have 60 days from the day you find something wrong in your account to notify your bank. Megan notified them the day she found out about it. You heard from attorney Dan Vedra in that last piece. He knows a lot about consumers' rights in cases like this, so we decided to pick his brain a little bit more. Say I'm Megan, right? And I get a call from my bank with some suspicious transactions. I look through things. I see the suspicious transactions. What do I need to do as a consumer to try to make sure that I can make myself whole in that situation?
I think eternal vigilance. I think what you need to do is find out what the transactions are, where they came from, where they went to. You need to change all of your logins. You need to find out how they were processed. So if the bank is telling you this is all coming from your computer or your IP address, there's something wrong with your computer. So finding out what happened is important. You need to change your logins, and you need to ask them to disable any sort of fund transfer activity that they allow within their bank so that no more money can go out, and restrict all access to the account.
What are my rights in a situation like this? Like, what does the law say that needs to happen to me?
Well, the law says that the consumer is not liable for unauthorized electronic funds transfers. The financial institution is liable for an unauthorized electronic funds transfer. So within 60 days of when the unauthorized electronic funds transfer happened, you need to dispute it with the bank. You can do it by phone if they allow it, and if there isn't a process to do it by phone, follow up with a written dispute. They have an obligation to investigate the dispute, to conduct a reasonable investigation to determine whether the funds transfer was authorized or unauthorized, and they have an obligation to credit your account back if it was unauthorized. If they don't do that, they can be liable to you for damages. They can be liable to you for up to $1,000 in statutory damages, in addition to the money that you've received. And if they willfully fail to comply with the law, they could be liable to you for additional damages plus attorney's fees and costs.
So knowing that all of that would be on the line for a bank, you would think that they go over and above to investigate these cases as much as possible and make people whole.
You would think so. You would hope so too. The fact of the matter is that there are so many electronic funds transfers, and there's so many of these unauthorized transactions going on each and every day that they don't have the manpower to reasonably investigate every single dispute that comes through. And so what you get is boilerplate letters like this that say, we did all of these things, and these things, it's nice that they did these things. I don't think that this is adequate to address what the concern was, which is somebody accessed her account, somebody took money out of her other bank account and then sent it to themselves using SoFi as an intermediary.
Is it worth contacting an attorney in a case like this? Or like, should I be able to get this sorted out through the bank? Like, should the bank, and what happens when the bank says, this is our boilerplate letter? Like, what are my rights then? Can I fight that?
You do have the ability to fight that. When Congress passed the Electronic Funds Transfer Act, the law that governs these types of transactions, it said that you have a right to sue the bank, you have a right to recover your damages, you have the right to recover additional damages by statute, and you have a right to your attorney fees and costs. And so an attorney who understands these laws, who understands how these transactions work, can certainly help to recover that money. And you should contact an attorney if it's someone who knows how this works and what the scheme is.
Do you find more and more of these cases where the bank just kind of says, oh, well, we looked into it and, here, everything seems okay on our end, so I guess you're out of luck?
It happens all the time because they're looking for very specific things in what happened, and they have very specific parameters for what they will actually give for a reimbursement. And these schemes are becoming more sophisticated, where people's accounts are being hacked and they're defeating even two-factor authentication. And it's really efficient with the amount of information that's available about people from previous data breaches. It's not that difficult to get access to people's passwords, to people's email addresses, to their cell phones. With cell phone cloning, all of these things can happen really quickly, and these are smart criminals. The bank, however, has an obligation to protect against it. They know what type of transactions are out there, and it's their obligation to investigate and credit back the consumer if the money was unauthorized. The most common scheme, it's called a phishing scheme, really. It's where, and I've had this happen to my clients, where some unscrupulous person will even repeatedly contact a person until they get a response. And they'll call the person up, they'll say, look, we're trying to prevent money from being taken from your account. The person's scared, they're activated, they don't know what to do, they don't think twice. And then to defeat the two-factor authentication, they say, oh, we need to authenticate you. We're gonna send you a code and you're going to give it to us so we can confirm you're the right person. What's really happening is that the person that's spoofing their phone number, that makes it look like they're calling from Wells Fargo or sending a text message from Wells Fargo, is actually trying at the exact same time to log into your Wells Fargo account, knowing that what will happen is that they will send this two-factor authentication code to the cell phone. So once you get that person on the line, they click login, the two-factor authentication code goes to the consumer relates it back to that person, they input it on their computer, they go in, they'll change the email address, they'll change the password, they'll change everything they can to make it more and more difficult for this to be discovered and to be prevented. Then they'll start initiating transactions where they send the money out. They'll want to send it by wire transfer because it's immediately available. And the recovery rights of the bank, the right of the bank to go back and try to get it from the recipient bank, are lower, and it's just a done deal.
At what point as the consumer am I liable?
You're liable if you gave actual authority to somebody to conduct the transaction. And if you're tricked into doing it, you shouldn't be liable. Now it can come out either way, it depends on the facts and circumstances, but the standard is actual authority. If you didn't give somebody actual authority to make the transaction on your behalf, them tricking you into it doesn't change that.
What would your advice to Megan be? She's now 6 months into this.
First thing I would do is I would write a letter to SoFi asking them specifically for all of the information that they used to conclude that there wasn't an error. SoFi has an obligation to provide that information to them so she can better understand what happened and what rights she has. If she has any additional information that she needs or wants to or needs to provide to SoFi, she should do that, ask them to reopen the investigation based upon additional information. If she hasn't already disputed this with the other institution where her money came from before it was sent out to the criminal, she needs to make those disputes with them. They may accept them, they may not. It's probably beyond 60 days. And then if she doesn't get satisfaction, then she probably needs to speak to an attorney who handles these types of cases. She needs to act quickly. There's a 60-day limit, more or less, for disputing the transactions, and there's a really short statute of limitations to file a lawsuit. She needs that quickly so that she can potentially recover her funds.
All of this is a very good reminder to make sure that your accounts are safe. Cybersecurity experts recommend you use a password manager to create unique, hard-to-guess passwords for each of your accounts. It'll keep track of it from there. And if you have the option, use two-factor authentication on your accounts. As always, if you have a consumer problem, send us an email. The email address right there on your screen. I'm Steve Stager, Steve on your side. We'll see you next week.